Today, we're going to try to go bargain shopping in free agency for the New Orleans Saints. My name is Tim. Let's talk Saints. Now, a couple of things before we start. Um, when I'm saying bargain basement or team friendly deal or anything involved with the money in, it's an interesting concept when you're talking about the Saints because they love to spend money in the current year and then shift the cap number down the road. So I'm mostly in the context of, hey, let's try to bring in some players without creating dead money that we're going to have to deal with at a later time. Uh, I discount a quarterback. I don't think we're signing one in free agency anytime soon. Kickers and punters. Offensive line was one I thought about, but it's in such kind of a state of flux right now that um, I'm not really sure. I don't know if anybody is what they're going to do there with the new coaching staff coming in and with the existing players. And plus, the bargain may actually be hidden in some of the guys that are there now. Pay cut because as I'm doing this, we're still not to uh, March 13th yet. So kind of anything can happen, and it probably is right now. Safety is another one that actually there is kind of been some talk that I've seen around where safety may be going under a reset, so to speak. So they may be their own whole bargain bin by themselves, depending on how it shakes out. There's some top guys like Xavier McKinley and Cameron Curl that are out there that probably in the last few years you're going to spend a lot of money to get them, but they may be coming to a more reasonable range for the Saints. And Julian Blackman is a guy that I can think of right off the top of my head, former safety for Indy, who's probably going to get caught in the wash, and pretty good player that has probably ended up taking a pay cut just because if this market resets for safeties, he's going to get caught in the wash. Um, Outside of that, defensive tackle was the only other one that I did want to try to, but that one, most of the available free agents that I was finding worth any type of value seem to be on the pass rush side. Um, I think Brian Brzee is going to develop along those lines. You're probably not looking there. And the real problem on the run interior, he was not a very good run defender last year, and really nobody else was either. So I really couldn't find that guy that's a good run defender that you could maybe slide in for cheap. There are some out there, but you're not going to do it for cheap. So kind of took that out of the equation also. First position I want to talk about is wide receiver. Currently, the Saints have three very exciting young players on the roster with 5 years of NFL experience between them, and they're likely to add a fourth receiver in the upcoming draft. Bargain hunting a veteran receiver would probably help fill out that wide receiver room and something that the Saints could definitely use. The guy I like is Josh Reynolds, formerly of Detroit in the last 2 years. Um, See his measurements there. He's a 7 year guy, and that's what I like when you look at his PFF grades. Lots of green, which is what we like to see. One red flag in the fumble area last year. But other than that, very solid NFL player, very solid NFL production. Kind of a reputation as a good hands guy. Can be very valuable in third, fourth downs, helping you move the chains. Um, Not a true playmaker. Never really was in his career. Probably never will be. But for the most part, kind of that guy that can maybe provide a little veteran leadership to a younger locker room. What I really like about him is his first 4 years were in Los Angeles with Sean McVay, the last two in Detroit with Ben Johnson, the playoff appearance last year, a Super Bowl appearance in 2018. So I think he brings a lot to the table and something that the Saints could, for the right price, could find some real value bringing him onto the team. The next position I want to talk about is linebacker. We're very solid with Demario and Pete right now, but adding some experience and some depth might be a good idea for the roster right now. And there's a couple linebackers that I want to talk about. Oren Burks is a former third rounder by Green Bay. He's played the last 2 years in Frisco and never quite lived up to any real expectations in Green Bay. But in 2022, starting with Frisco, he backed up probably the best linebacking pair in the NFL in Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. And he did start earning some snaps. I think Greenlaw had, especially in 2023, had a little injury issue. And other than pass rush, he is a solid linebacker for those 2 years. I don't quite know how the NFL is going to view him, but I don't think he's going to be a hot commodity. So in the bargain basement bin, maybe the Saints can go dive into there and pull Owen Burks out of it. The other one is interested in is Tyrell Dodson, who was actually undrafted and signed by the Bills in 2020. And he's another one that nothing really exciting about in his first 3 years. He was primarily a backup, didn't play a whole lot. But in 2023, Matt Milano, one of their starting linebackers, was lost for the year in Week 5 with an injury, and he filled in for Milano. Other than a tackling issue, and that's really the only thing that gives me pause, but I don't think this is a guy that everybody's going to rush out and pay a big contract to come in and be a starting linebacker for him. So he may be another veteran. He's 4 years, kind of looks like he's starting to put it together after his final year in Buffalo, and could be the kind of depth piece that you can add for not giving an exorbitant contract for. Now, the next position we're going to talk about is defensive edge, which the Saints are more than likely going to draft some help in the early rounds. But they really do need more help than just a first-round pick. For this discussion, I kind of excluded guys on the wrong side of 30 because there's a couple out there that may show up on NFL prove-it deals from the edge. They can still play. Jadeveon Clowney comes to mind. And Chase Young has been mentioned. I've seen some people talking about Chase Young. I just get, with his potential that he was drafted as a first rounder, but added to his injury history he's had since he's been in the NFL, it's just a little too much of a Marcus Davenport vibe for me, so I kind of knocked him off the list. But did find three guys that I think may have some value for the Saints. First one is Andrew Van Ginkel. It was a fifth-round selection by Miami in 2019. And kind of spent time as a rotational player. Snaps got way up in 2021, kind of back to a rotational player. But always had good pass rush numbers outside of his rookie year. In 2023, their starter Jalen Phillips got bit by the injury bug, ended up missing a total of 8 games. And Van Ginkel was the primary fill-in, totaled 5 sacks in those 8 games, played very, very well, and graded out very well with PFF. So I don't know how the rest of the NFL reacts to 1 year from an edge rusher because everybody wants edge. So he could have parlayed just those 8 games in that stretch into to a bigger contract. But if not, he could be a pretty reasonable addition in case Cam doesn't quite work out or we're still having trouble with Foskey. Another veteran opposite of Granderson is something the Saints do need to address. Another, I think, could be a bargain possibility is former first-rounder Derek Barnett, drafted 2017 by the Eagles. And interesting case with him. He kind of, for most of his career with Philly, flashed a little bit in spots, but was mostly a pretty solid to average player. But in 2023, uh, Philly placed him on waivers, and he was claimed by Houston. And his play with Philly kind of had some drop off um, issues. He shows up in Houston, and then all of a sudden starts grading out like he's never graded out before. Um, Only really red flag he had in those games was Week 17 against Tennessee, and that's probably more of a Derrick Henry issue than possibly a Derek Barnett issue. So there's a guy that again do not know what the NFL is going to think about this stretch of where he played very well um, in Houston's playoff run, and somebody could throw a ton of money at him because he is a former first rounder, and that sometimes tends to happen. But if he's right price, I think he could be somebody that the Saints bring in and let's see what you got. The third one is AJ Epinesa. I do not know if I'm saying that correct. My apologies if I am not. Um, he kind of falls into the category of second round draft pick, and again, not really meeting much in expectations until last year. And still, as part of a rotational piece, he started getting his pass rush numbers, which were always good and much better position. Um, Run defense and the tackling, though, again, defensive end, this seems to be something you see a lot. But those total pressure numbers he kind of consistently brought to Buffalo in a rotational role as an edge rusher. That could be something you find beneficial for the Saints again because Cam's a question mark, Foskey's a question mark. You kind of only really have Curtis Granderson in that true pass rush area. So if the Saints are looking for some short term help, that should not be expensive on the ledger. Espinosa should be looked at hard. So that'll wrap up the show for today. Um, Basically, my goal is not to be right all the time, just not be wrong all the time. So let me know what you think. Drop comments down below. Like, share, subscribe. Fledgling channel here, trying to build a community for Saints fans, and any help would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, I'm Tim. Who dat?